Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from SpringDeer333 and says, am I the arsehole for joking about my husband in front of our work colleagues after he refused to socialize? About a month ago, I, female 38, was promoted to a higher position at my job. I am now in a more senior position than my husband, male 41, at work. My husband has always told me how happy he was that I got the promotion, but sometimes I get the feeling that he's embarrassed that I'm technically his superior now. Last night, we had a work-related social event. It was supposed to be an opportunity to build team cohesion and that sort of thing. My husband didn't really want to go. He's pretty introverted. He also said he had a migraine and didn't want to make it worse. I told him that it would be weird if he didn't come and people might think he's jealous of me getting the promotion. After some more persuasion, I was able to convince him to come along. When we got there, he greeted a few people but ended up spending most of the time sitting in a corner on his own and only chatting with a few people at a time. Aside from that, the event was pretty good and most of our co-workers were present. At some point, I was in a large group when Sarah, female 46, who had not yet seen my husband there, asked where he was and jokingly asked if he was as serious and mysterious at home as he was at work. I told them he was the complete opposite at home. I said that while at work, he seemed organized. At home, he's a bit of a slob. I joked about how he always leaves his laundry all over the floor. I mentioned things like how he complains too much about random trivial things like the neighbor's kids, sometimes playing on our lawn. I also mentioned how he has a fear of heights and how he was shaken the entire time when we crossed a rope bridge during our honeymoon. I did say a few other things like how I sometimes feel like I'm his parent. Everyone was interested and surprised to hear all of this, and we did share many laughs together. At some point my husband walked into the conversation and quickly pieced together what we were talking about. The rest of the conversation was awkward after that. On the drive home, my husband was not speaking. When I asked him if everything was alright, he said that I surprised him. I was annoyed by him being vague, so I told him that I knew that he wasn't feeling 100%, but that he was acting childish for not socializing and acting offended. He said that it was childish and rude that I was sharing his personal details with our colleagues. I then told him that he was blowing things out of proportion, but he didn't respond, and the rest of the ride was silent. When we got home, we argued again about the night's events. My husband said my behavior was appalling and that he questioned if I had any respect for him. I was angry by his outburst, so I told him that he was only being sensitive because I was technically his superior now, and that was what was really bothering him. The argument ended there, as my husband didn't want to waste any more time and went to bed. This morning, I texted my younger sister what happened and she accused me of being insensitive. Am I the arsehole? Now, I was pretty sure he was going to be the arsehole straight away from the title on this one, but, you know, I gave it a chance, and in the second paragraph you said your husband didn't want to go because he's pretty introverted, and he also said he had a migraine, so, you know, he's feeling pretty shitty anyway. And with that, what did you decide to do? You told him it'd be weird if he didn't come, and that he'd be jealous of you for getting a promotion. You pressured him to go along. You said yourself that he was chatting with a few people at a time, or sitting on his own sometimes. He was absolutely socializing with other people. And then when some people were curious about your husband, you just went and completely berated him. You basically said to that group, yeah, he may seem organized at work, but, you know, he's a slob, leaves stuff all over the place, and he complains too much about trivial things like the neighbor's kids on the lawn, and that you feel like his parent. Not one nice thing you said about him. You didn't mention about what, you know, his hobbies might be. It just had me thinking, do you even like this person? Because you'll certainly treat him horribly. So while she was laughing and joking with your colleagues and your husband wasn't in the room and he did walk in, you recognize that you fucked up when the conversation went awkward. On the drive home, did you apologize? Did you bollocks? You again to berate him to his face a bit more, calling him childish for not socializing and acting offended that you just berated him all evening to your friends. And I can absolutely see why he's questioning if you have any respect for him. And I gotta question how you actually got promoted because your people skills are awful. But Morgaine says, dear Lord, you're the arsehole. It's bad enough that you mocked him and shared personal information about him to your work colleagues, but even worse that you mocked and shared personal information about him to his work colleagues, and you mocked and ridiculed one of your subordinates. Your behavior was completely unprofessional and disrespectful towards your marriage. Dry Sandwich said, seriously, you're senior enough to have been promoted, but you don't understand the basics of professional behavior. Of course you're the arsehole. To be frank, the vibe I get is that maybe you shouldn't have been promoted. You don't sound mature enough to understand or supervise people. I hope I'm wrong, but I foresee a lot of drama in your team. If it turns out that you're not up to the responsibility, then you could get a bad reputation and find it hard to move on to another position. It was completely fine for your husband to focus on talking to just a few people. He attended the event, and it's fine and normal that he didn't want to spend his free time at a work event. Do you really not get that people have different styles as far as interacting with others? I feel sorry for the people you're in charge of now. As for the personal comments, it's hard to know what to say. Are you actually confused about what's appropriate personal information to share about your spouse, or are you looking to make excuses after you chose to run your husband down to make yourself look better? Also, it's weird that you keep talking about being his superior. You mention it over and over, both to us and him. The problem is not him, it's that you're immature and have no idea how to behave or treat people. Uma by Uma says you're the arsehole from your description. I don't see your husband being jealous of you. Instead, it appears that you might harbor a hidden sense of superiority due to your higher position. You might not be willing to admit it, but it seems like you're doing your best to subtly belittle him in various situations and in front of others to highlight your own status. V2 Slasher says, I am shocked that one whole night's time last night plus your sister's reply this morning failed to make you realize that you're the asshole big time. Your colleagues are curious about your husband. Sure, tell them about his hobbies, his work, where he comes from, etc. That would be enough. Fear of heights, being a slob at home, etc. is way beyond what your colleagues need to know. Imagine your husband telling his colleagues, oh, my wife is a binge snack eater at home and she is afraid of spiders, blah blah blah, on your first time meeting his colleagues. You're the arsehole. And one more comment from Stress Soggy, who says you're the arsehole for putting what others think over how your husband felt and bullied him into going to an event he didn't want to go. You're the arsehole for what you talked about your husband in a workplace. You literally only talk shit about him. Doesn't matter if it's true, that was a place of work, and what happens at home doesn't have room in a workplace. If you are not happy with your husband at home, get a divorce and don't humiliate him at work. You're the arsehole even because after he told you how that made him feel, you still made it about you and accused him of jealousy. Want more? And I was scrolling this post looking for some other kind of opinion on it and not the arsehole and everyone sucks or something, but it was nowhere to be had. So OP did update the post and said, I'll start this post off firstly by saying I was completely in the wrong. There are zero excuses for how I treated my husband that night at the work social. He is without a doubt the personification of a perfect husband. Honestly, at times I find myself wondering if he's too good for me. He's the kindest person I know. He's incredibly supportive of me in every way. He's funny, he's very intelligent, easy to talk to, and yes, he's also very good looking. I feel heartbroken about the things I said, especially about the fear of heights thing. My husband only bothered overcoming it and crossing that rope bridge for my sake after all. After reading the comments I received and doing extensive self-reflection, I profusely apologized to my husband and I told him that I do love and respect him. I apologized not only for the things I said that night, but also for my general behavior since I got my promotion and my accusations of him being jealous. Being him, he accepted my apology immediately and even said that he had already forgiven me because he considered my actions to be a mistake rather than intentional. He then actually apologized as well because he thought that he had spoken out of anger and escalated the situation when we got home. Since then, I've been trying my best to be worthy of him. He told me that we should let the whole thing be in the past, but I think I always cringe when I think back to that night and the time leading up to it. Things at work have also been pretty smooth. My husband doesn't mind going in and chatting with our colleagues. Yesterday, he, in fact, expanded on the rope bridge story with one of our colleagues, so I think he's comfortable. Now, I'm really just hoping now that I can be as a good spouse as he is. And the comments were pretty split on this one. A lot of people saying, they think this apology is a fake apology. Other people saying that they hope she's learned a lesson in this particular situation. But what do you guys make of this one? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from Livid School 5534 from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit and asks, am I the arsehole for telling my child's father's new wife that she can't come with us on our son's college tours? My son will be a senior in high school this fall, and we have been touring colleges. We toured a few this spring and plan to tour several out-of-state ones throughout the summer. The plan was for myself, my husband, and his father to do the tours together. We'll be touring 4 schools, and he's coming to 3 of them. Some background. My son's father and I split up before our son was 6 months old. Soon after our relationship ended, I met my now husband and we got married when my son was 3. My ex has been supportive of our relationship and thinks my husband is a great stepfather. Our co-parenting relationship has been challenging at times, but we've done just fine for the sake of our son. Last year, my ex eloped with this woman, Shelley, not her real name. They dated for only a year or so before marrying. I don't know her too well since we've only met twice, but I know she has 3 kids of her own. Her oldest is about the same age as my son. My son dislikes her. He thinks Shelley is mentally unhinged, is way too involved in his personal business, and he blames her for being the reason he hasn't been able to spend as much quality time with his father lately. Earlier this week, I was coordinating with my ex about the details of our next tour. Everything was great until he mentioned that Shelley would be coming along on all our tours. I asked why and if it was necessary that she tag along. He said that she just wanted to be supportive. I asked him if her daughter was looking at these schools too, since she's going to be a senior, and he said no. So why is she coming then if her own child isn't planning on attending those schools? I told him that our son should get a say in who comes to the tours, and I would ask him what he thought about Shelley joining us. After I got off the phone with my ex, I asked our son if he wanted Shelley to come with us. He immediately replied no, and that he wasn't comfortable with her coming. I told our son that he should speak with his father and let him know about what he thinks. Fast forward to last night. My ex calls and is furious that I would get our son involved in this matter. I replied that our son is the one touring the colleges and making decisions about his future, and he gets to decide who can come along. Not to mention, our son is almost an adult and at his age is more than capable of deciding who he wants in his life and to what extent. Son has been vocal to his father about his feelings about Shelley. He accepts his father loves her, but he doesn't see her as family. So I told my ex that if he loves his son and wants to continue having a positive relationship with him, then he needs to respect his wishes and leave his wife at home. End of story. Ex replies that I'm an arsehole. Shelley cares about our son and that he should be allowed to bring his wife with him whenever he chooses. Was I wrong? Am I the arsehole? So there was a couple of questions asked to the OP which OP responded. So someone said, why would 3 adults need to go on these tours? Just take 1 to each but not Shelley. OP says you're right, 3 adults is too much, so adding a 4th is not ideal. What I didn't include, because word limits, is that we have 4 tours and X is only going to 3 due to 1 being in conflict with a family wedding. My husband, son, stepdad isn't going to one of them because of a business trip and might have to bail on another one. But it was son's choice to have his stepdad there because A, he loves him like a dad, and B, one of the schools we're touring is his alma mater. So the breakdown is actually this. First tour, mum, dad, stepdad. Second, mum, stepdad. Third, mum, dad. Fourth, mum, dad, stepdad. Then someone asks, why do you not like Shelley? Hope you respond saying, I appreciate you're not the arsehole vote, but I never said that I disliked Shelley. I've only met her twice, so I can't say for sure how I personally feel about her. But my son dislikes her, and it's enough for me to have some negative feelings about her. I've been completely neutral about Shelley around my son, so I'm not stirring things up between anyone. If anything, I've been the one trying to smooth things over. But if my son doesn't want a relationship with her, that's his choice. I don't see how her coming along would be a bonding experience since her presence makes him uncomfortable. And the only reason my husband is coming is because my son asked him to. My husband has been in my son's life a long time and they have a strong bond, so of course he gets to come and support our son. Now, I don't have any experience about this sort of stuff, about college tours and all this sort of stuff. So I'm coming at this very simply in that, the son gets to make the decision here. Like you said, he's pretty much an adult now and he can choose who wants to come on these tours with him. And Shelley, the dad, should all be accepting of that. It's just that simple to me. But Rack1882 says, not the arsehole, your son has the final say here. But honestly, your ex needs to hear himself. If Shelley cared about your son, Son should never have to say that he wants one-on-one time with his dad. Shelly should be telling X, hey, you need to make sure that just because we're married and there are like 3 more kids in the house that you aren't skipping time with just Son. Shelly should be saying, if Son wants me on these college visits, awesome, but I'm fine staying home. These college tours aren't a family bonding experience for X, Shelly and Son. They aren't a chance for a romantic weekend getaway for Shelly and X. They're about Son seeing where he might want to spend the next 4 years of his life. Jerkin says not the arsehole. I just tell him one last time, dude, you're making your son super unhappy. If she actually cares about him, then she should respect his wishes and boundaries. The fact that she refuses says that this is about her, not him. Respecting your son's wishes, not make me an arsehole. You cramming your wife, who already needles him down his throat, makes you the arsehole. Just remember, we had this conversation in a few years when you come to me, ask him why he won't speak to you anymore. Ad1 says not the arsehole. This is another case of a parent trying to shove a step-parent down his poor child's throat. Your ex has no concern at all for his son. He and his mama wannabe should both stay home because if poor little wife doesn't get her way, he'd be making the trip all about her hurt feelings. It's a pity your son's father doesn't care about him. Please don't let him ruin this milestone for your son. And one more from Terry Sayers who says, not the arsehole. No student needs 4 parents with them on their college tour. Shelly will most likely be bored and make everyone else miserable. I recommend you make future college visits without your son's dad or his wife. Also, you discussed and arranged the split of college costs with your ex yet. It's possible that Shelly could cause trouble when it comes to paying for college, especially if she thinks her kids deserve your ex's support too, or if she seems your son's college to be too expensive. If you don't already have clear plans regarding your son's college expenses, you might want to discuss this with your family attorney. In some states that favor college support from divorced parents, the filing for amended support orders could possibly need to be filed before the student turns 18. So OP does update the post and says, first of all, thanks for the validation and the kind words some left. I've read nearly everything you all have left, so thank you. I'd like to emphasize for anyone who may have missed it in my original post that my son has been the main one communicating his boundaries to his dad, not me. My son is 17 and more than capable of setting and enforcing his own boundaries. Also, since some expressed that it's hypocritical for my husband to be there but not Shelly, let me reiterate that my son asked his stepdad to come along on the tours, and X is fine with him being there. There was never an issue in the first place. There's also a lot more to the story behind why my son doesn't like Shelly that I couldn't explain in my original post. If it was up to me, I'd like him to get to know her better, but I understand his reasons and I honor them. I'm certainly not pitting him against her like some of you implied. I talked to my son late last night about his father being upset about him not wanting Shelly to come along. I told him that I fully respected his choices and reminded him that he can share this experience with whomever he wants. I encouraged him to talk to his dad again, explain his feelings about the situation, and I let him know that I was happy to step in if he needed me. I also added that if he ultimately decided that he wanted to go on these tours alone or with just one parent to avoid drama, which I communicated might be the best option, but that's just my opinion, and he doesn't need to consider it if he doesn't want to. That would be okay too. It's his tours and his decisions. So he called his dad this morning and calmly told him that he didn't want Shelly coming along on any of the tours and explained his reasons, which mainly included needing time with his dad sans Shelly, and him not wanting an entourage accompanying him on his tours. 5 is a crowd dad. I lolled when he said that. This time my ex was more receptive and told our son that he respected his feelings. But then he put Son on the spot and told him that he should talk to Shelly directly about her not coming. He was not comfortable with that and requested that I step in and talk to both his dad and Shelly. So I got on the phone and repeated that this was our son's decision. I didn't say anything about our son disliking Shelly or feeling uncomfortable around her, but that's besides the point. Shelly was clearly disappointed and said she understood and only wanted an opportunity to bond with our new stepson. I replied that it was sweet of her to want to get to know him better, but the college tour isn't the time nor place. Overall, she seemed to be okay with it. We spoke for another minute or two and then she left the conversation and I talked to X for a little while. I reiterated to him that ever since Shelly came into the picture, our son feels like he doesn't get as much quality time with his dad anymore because either she's there during the entire time together or he's busy being a stepfather to her kids. Son doesn't have an issue with his step-siblings, but also I want to make sure X makes time for his own kid. I also explained to him that if Shelly not coming was going to be a big of a deal to him, then he shouldn't come either. He said he understood where I was coming from and apologized for calling me an arsehole. I asked him if it was Shelly who was pushing this issue or it was him. Based on his response, I got the sense that Shelly expressed an interest in going. It was okay not going if that was really Son's decision. but my ex just really wants her to feel more like part of his family. It was a mix of him appeasing her, but also wanting his son to get to know her better. So I gave him two choices. Either he comes without Shelley or uses those opportunities to have special time with his son, or he doesn't come to the tours and we find a weekend for him and son to spend one-on-one time. But either way, Shelley isn't going to be there because our son isn't interested in a relationship with her right now, and he shouldn't force it onto him. He said he'd think about his choices. So all good there. I hope he decides to leave Shelley at home and come to whatever tours he can, because I know how important it is to our son. And I think all's well that ends well at the moment. I certainly didn't like the hesitation at the end there, what it sounded like. He said he'd think about his choices. I kind of felt if you don't want to damage the relationship with your son, there's only really one choice there for you. And forcing this relationship with Shelley, like it was said many times, it's just not going to work, and it would never work. We've seen it time and time again in these stories. It would have been interesting to get the son's perspective on this. Obviously OP knows a little bit more, but the way he said that she's unhinged was a bit worrying, right? But let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.